Now, since I only have these Sorentos for 2 days, I need to do a crash course. Let's start with the interior space. The fit and finish is pretty good. It's in the 80th percentile. There are a few gaps and weird trim pieces, but overall, this feels very well built and solid upon first impressions. There's only about 1,800 miles on it, so it shouldn't have any creaks or rattles, and this doesn't, and it's 25 degrees Fahrenheit out. So when you look at the door panel, there's a lot of hard plastics here, even on the upper trim level. The upper door panel, the lower door panel, and when you get towards the bottom, it definitely feels more cheap. Add to the fact that the door pockets are not that large, and it doesn't even fit my traditional water bottle in it without really stretching out the hard plastics. The grab handles, however, with the areas that you touch feel really good. They put the leather in the right places, and when you opt for this beigeish brown baseball glove interior, it does break up a lot of the black that this car has. It also has this digitally plastic printed wood trim on the side doors, and it's almost identical to that in the Telluride. And many people say this is kind of like a clone Telluride in a smaller form factor. It doesn't really feel that way to me. The front driver space feels more confined, and it definitely feels way more tight. It's definitely more of a tight cabin up front. Add to the fact that these seats feel really high. And you can tell they bolted this farther up, and I don't know if it's just the dashboard architecture that they've used. They have to move you up so high to give you better command of the road, but it's something that I noticed right away. The next part is when you look at the front area of this, and Hyundai kind of reversed their course on it where there's no piano black. Now Kia is overusing it. It's on the steering wheel. It's on the base of the steering wheel. They kind of are copying this threaded design from premium brands where they make it look like it's one solid screen here. That is all piano black. It's all fingerprinted and dusty. The vents have it. The door panels have it. The center console is littered with it. And of course, on the side part of the trim of the center console where you're constantly rubbing, there's already scratches on the passenger side. And I'm going to keep bringing this up until the designers of these cars get in them after they've been built for even 6 months to see how bad it looks. It's a horrible choice, and I'm going to leave it at that. Now, in terms of some carryover stuff, you have the heated and cooled seat switches in a really good place. There's good use of mechanical controls where you need it, but they've backpedaled on some of that now and done capacitive touch buttons here for HVAC controls. And I think they're large enough where it's okay. It's not completely annoying, but if I put this on, a glove, it doesn't work. So it's one of these things where they kind of take a couple steps forward and then they take a couple steps back. They haven't figured out how to marry the physical and kind of gimmicky controls that they're using. Overall, visibility is great. The overall look and feel of everything is great, and the seats are super comfortable here. But I think one of the big things to discuss is the back seat configurability. The second row, despite the front part of this cart feeling a little bit more tight, the second row is amazing. It is absolutely amazing, and once you have this, it's going to be hard to go back to any other car. You have an electronic release on the side of the seat that kind of flips the seat forward and down, so you can get into the back without messing with handles. But when you get into the second seat, you can move forward and back. It's amazing how much adjustability there is. It's almost minivan-like in terms of sliding and reclining. So that second row is where you want to be. When you get to the third row, that's where things get not good. And I know what Kia is trying to do here. They're trying to put a third row in here as a selling feature. And while it might be a selling feature, if you are 2 feet tall, you're going to like that. The second thing is you lose that center seat. It's captain's chairs, at least in these, and when you crawl through that center tunnel, it's very easy to get back there, but you're compromising some of the passenger space by putting that third row in there, and I don't know. Do people really use it? I would just leave that third row down, because when you put the hatch up and you see just how much space is back there when that third row of seats is up, it's completely unusable. It's almost laughable. You have more space in the trunk of a Miata. So you're basically going to ride around with this with those third row seats down all the time, and only going to use the third row seats in a total pinch, or if you have like a very small child or an animal back there. Now, putting the seats down in the back is stupid simple. It's really easy and satisfying. There was no binding in the cables. Like, I had some trouble in the Toyota products I had where the cables wouldn't completely release the seats and you struggled with them. There were no struggles with the seating configuration here. But let's talk about technology, the last part of this. The gauge cluster is all digital. The graphics look pretty good. The aliasing or anti-aliasing on the circular or curvature in the graphics does not look that jagged compared to some of the older displays. The black levels are good, so this does not blind you at night. This is their newer infotainment screen, so they've gone to an ultra-wide display. It is functional, it is fast. However, there are now capacitive touch buttons for this as well. They've gotten rid of physical controls, so again, if you're gloved up, it's annoying. They also add some of the features that you've seen now in upper-end Kia and Hyundai products, including now Genesis with the center home screen. You have voice memo ability. You have quiet mode, which kind of quiets down the car, so it's only coming out of one speaker. That's a really nice implementation. And of course, you have the sounds of nature, which is a staple of the Hyundai and Kia product line. Things like the Snowy Village, which sounds like serial killers coming after you. And then you have the men's locker room here, where it sounds like men using the urinal. But I feel like they could do more with this. There's a couple usable modes like ocean waves. It's very calming in traffic. I feel like they have a really good grip on how to blend gimmicks together with technology, and that's a good time to go into the shop and talk about all the things that were the reasons why you're probably going to buy this mechanically. Underneath the brand new Sorento, we have the all-wheel and front-wheel drive, and we're focusing on the X-Line all-wheel drive here, Jack. And
yes, this is the very best Seoul has to offer, Mark.
Okay.
My Korean jeans are... Oof.
You're on fire, except This is made in America.
Oh, you were breaking my heart.
Well, you might notice something similar here, Jack.
This is very similar to the Telluride. In fact, most people, when I've driven past them, have thought this is the Telluride, and that's because they're on the same architecture, and from an engineering perspective, they're largely the same. However, there are two key differences. Overall dimensions, this is a shorter vehicle by about 10 inches, and the drivetrain options are dramatically different.
Yes, where it does share the same thing is suspension. Some of the underbody, obviously the same architecture, and the rear differential is the same. The difference here is the engine choices. You get stuck with a four-popper. Naturally aspirated 2.5 liter in the lower trims only, and then the upper trims get the 2.5 liter turbo, which is new for Hyundai and Kia.
But that turbo produces more power than the V6 offered in the Telluride, correct?
Yes, and I don't know if it does, honestly, but it definitely has more torque. And it feels way faster. It is also mated to a much different transmission here. No torque converted unit, you get a dual clutch on the turbo.
Just like in a Porsche, according to Kia.
Oh yeah, their marketing's going to ramrod a few things towards you, like torque vectoring, which it's not mechanical torque vectoring.
This is just like a 911 turbo, dude.
Yeah, well, definitely. So it has torque vectoring by brake, which is all electronically controlled, using the brakes to help the car get turned in or feel more neutral. The rear differential is also tuned the same way as the Telluride through the drive modes. It's capable of locking, or it's a simulated, not a simulated.
It's not a real center locking diff, though.
Correct. The transfer case is capable of sending 50% of the torque to the back for certain periods of time.
Under a certain speed.
Right, under certain loads. It is still a front-wheel drive architecture first, so for most urban driving, this is way more than what most people need or want. So I think the next thing to talk about is there's one area where this bests the Telluride currently, and that is overall ground clearance. With the X-Line only, it has a higher ground clearance, and it also has better departure and approach angles. So if you want the best and most off-road capable Sorento, you get the X-Line. So it's not just the body differences, the unpainted plastic on the outside.
Oh, interesting.
So other than that, Jack, I think we've covered pretty much everything here.
Yeah, they're very similar in price. So really what it comes down to is what you want in capability. Do you need the third row? And do you need the extra space offered in the Telluride behind the third row?
Correct. And the differences on the inside, the lower trim levels get 7 seats. The upper trim levels go to the captain's chair. So that's something to note as well. And there's a hybrid version coming that's supposed to have just as good a fuel economy as the Kia Rio if you drive it responsibly. But again, this is a 2-day test. We can't go over everything in every detail. So let's get this out on the road.
I'm real excited.
I know you are. All right, Jack, we're going to set off in the front-wheel drive Sorento.
Show me. You said there's a little bit of a problem with this drivetrain, Mark.
Nah, not much. Other than the fact that it wants to rip the front tires off the car every single time you start off. It doesn't matter if you're quarter throttle, now we're in the cold, it chirps the tires all the time from a start, going straight. If you try to turn the steering wheel and accelerate, like I'm going to show you right here, this is the best part, my favorite part. Okay, so while it is extremely amusing from our perspective when we're trying to judge and test cars, it is not going to be fun as an owner of this.
No, there's an issue when you put over 300 foot-pounds of torque through a single wheel, because this has an open diff.
It does. I don't know what the torque is, but it's pushing 300 pounds and it's pushing 300 horsepower. This is, the Genesis gets even more at the 2.5 liter turbo. And here's the argument, here's the problem I had with the K5. The K5, much like this, is amazing. They do tech well, it's comfortable, all the safety systems work, it rides great. Everything about it is even better than the Honda and Toyota equivalents in many ways. But the big problem with Hyundai and Kia is they keep throwing more power, which isn't a problem. It's a problem when you're paying for it and you're using it and you're putting it in here and you can't utilize all of it. It's completely, I swear to God, if you put 150 horsepower in here, it would be way more usable and better to drive than this monster levels of torque that they're throwing at it, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're going slow, fast, as soon as you nail the throttle, it cannot put the power down, and it's one of the hugest deficiencies about this generation of, oh my God. I mean, you're basically doing a one-wheel peel anytime you're turning the wheel and accelerating, and yes, I'm mashing down the throttle more, but even just, this is half. It's half throttle, and all it's doing is spinning a tire, like you said, because it's open diff. This is the wrong implementation for this car or any of these cars with this much torque and horsepower. You need a limited slip in the front, and if you don't, then you shouldn't be doing this. By default, if you're buying this, you should just go straight to the naturally aspirated version or go to the all-wheel drive setup.
Their dynamics for their higher powered vehicles on this platform, the front-wheel drive platform that they have, is abysmal. But, Mark, I think it's time for us to hop into the all-wheel drive variant of this.
Yeah, let's check that out, because that's going to fix a lot of the problems that I have with this.
So Mark, we're in the all-wheel drive variant with the same motor. Let's see how it handles the power. A little bit less drama, Mark.
Way less drama, so let's get right into the positive. We spent probably 3 minutes where I was just on a rant. This engine is amazing.
It is really, really impressive. And the dual clutch, despite their marketing gimmicks, it's not Porsche good, but it is remarkably good for this segment of vehicle. It's very, very responsive. There's no gear shock. It doesn't gear hunt, and I guess the responsiveness is what you're kind of hoping for in a vehicle like this.
Right? You hear dual clutch, and I think it's been overused in the performance or enthusiast market. A dual clutch does not have to be for a performance car if you tune it right. The only trade-off of having a dual clutch in here is it's a little stuttery from when you get off the line.
It's at like 1 or 2 miles an hour. When you're creeping, when you're going from a dead stop to slowly moving forward in traffic, it does feel like there's a little bit of shudder throughout the car.
There does, and that's about the only negative thing I've picked up on these 2 days, and granted that's 2 days, so we don't know what it's going to be like over time. But it's quick to downshift, it's quick to shift, and like you said, no gear hunting. So with the all-wheel drive setup, when you throw the all-wheel drive setup on here and 300 pounds of torque and almost 300 horsepower, all of the problems we had with the front-wheel drive car is almost completely minimized.
Yeah, as I'm about to demonstrate. Left-hand turn, foot all the way down. It's not the most natural feeling system, right? It detects the slip in the front, then sends power to the rear. It doesn't feel particularly organic, but it is effective, and in bad weather, it should keep you safe.
Yes, and if you're gonna have this much power, you need to have it being sent to the rear wheels in an open differential car. So if you want this motor, you have to have all-wheel drive. You're gonna have to spring for it. If you are budget conscious, you're just going to go right to the base trim levels because you're just throwing away your money on the turbo motor and front wheel drive.
You need to spend the $2,000 and get all-wheel drive if you're buying this vehicle with the higher horsepower engine. Let's talk about ride and steering. First with ride, Mark.
This is not like a Telluride, and I know there's a lot of comparisons in the media. The interior cabin space, which I talked about in the interior commentary, does not feel like it at all. This doesn't feel as couch-like. It feels way more responsive. It's quicker in terms of reflexes. It feels more car-like than big SUV here, and I think that's one of the things I really like about the Sorento.
It has much better body control, but it is a busier ride, though.
It is a busier ride, and it doesn't feel as quiet to me. And I say that carefully because quiet is relative. You have this, you have an enormous roof, you have a lot of glass. You close this up, it gets a little bit more quiet, but it's not offensively bad. Like something like the Tesla we just got out of where all you hear is reverberations, it's not like that. Most people that are going to get into this in the $30,000, for like near $40,000 price range, it feels like entry-level luxury car. It just doesn't feel as refined as a Telluride.
Yeah, the steering is pretty quick. It's very, very car-like. All the inputs are car-like. Obviously, there's not a lot of communication, but it is direct, and it does not wander.
No, it doesn't wander at all. This is safety. Like I said, all the fundamentals are really good here. And with all-wheel drive, it gets the engine power in check. This is a very good car. And I'm going to probably talk about this with the K5 all-wheel drive as well. There's so little to complain about here that I can't imagine them not selling the hell out of these.
I'm surprisingly impressed by this vehicle.
Yeah, it's really good, and I'll kind of talk about that more in the final thoughts, the comparisons between like a CX-5, a RAV4, all of that. So,
all right, Mark, let's get into the final thoughts.
Final thoughts on these two pre-production Sorentos. Both of them were about $42,000, $43,000. One was front-wheel drive, one was all-wheel drive. The X-Line gives you 1 extra inch of ground clearance. So if you are somebody that's taking this thing off regular pavement, just get the X-Line. You're going to be able to use that more appropriately. Now, the price delta between the all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive versions are only about $1,800. And I'm going to tell you this. If you're getting the turbocharged version, spend the extra money for the all-wheel drive. It will feel better dynamically. You won't be chirping tires. You won't have to be easy on the gas everywhere. You can actually turn the wheel and push down the gas and it will get traction. And that's what you're paying for. You're paying for this power. You might as well be able to use it. So negotiate with your dealer to get the price down. The other negative things that we found is, granted, these are pre-production. They've been passed around like an old shoe. The lift gate was broken on one of them. It wouldn't open. And, who knows, somebody could have broken it. The other thing was the dual clutch transmission on the all-wheel drive version had a lot of vibration and hesitation from a crawl, like just rolling when you're coming to a stop. And it's something that the front-wheel drive version didn't suffer from. And I don't know if there was an issue or if this is just the way that it was programmed. So something to keep an eye on in your test drive. But the main takeaway, much like I say as a broken record in every Kia video, you can get a great version of the Sorento for like $35,000, $36,000. And they give you pretty much every feature that you could possibly want. And it does everything so well. The technology is so well implemented. The comfort, the ride quality, the quietness for the price is pretty much as good as you're going to get. The only negative part here about that package is the third row they throw in here, and I think a lot of it is just for marketing. It's not that usable, and when the seats are up in the back, you lose all your cargo capacity. So one of those things you want to look at before you're deciding. So should you buy this? Should you look at it? Absolutely. Kia continues to push the boundaries of what's possible. It's got one of the better engines, it's got one of the better transmissions, it's got one of the better ride qualities, and one of the better setups in terms of tech. Best Honda and Toyota in that. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.